If you are really afraid that this will be one of those sessions when we will do a presentation and then have Q&A, and it will be very static, this is not the type of a session. We will have a presentation, we will have a Q&A, but after that, you will be all discussing the topics of your interests. So, after that, I will explain a little bit more later. So, if you are ready, I will now introduce you to our speakers today. We have Natalia Timkip, who's representing the whole board of trustees today as the board chair. And we have a special guest appearance of Yael Weisbrook, who is not at the board, but is the VP of Community Growth in the Wikimedia Foundation, and will be supporting some really interesting conversations today. So, if you're ready, let's get going. Find a cat, leave your coffee.
Okay. Yeah. No. Change. Okay. So this is the pictures of the current trustees who are now on the board. We have 12 members. Go. Next. So overall, the board's role is oversight and strategy, and not day-to-day operations. The board of the Wikimedia Foundation is a supervisory board, an operational board, which is more usual in our movement and in smaller organizations. That means that if you are on the board, you are not involved in making decisions. Are we going to fund exactly this project or that? Are we going to give exactly this amount of money or another amount of money to something else? This is not the role of the board. That's like more like a direction. This is a direction we are digging in, and not exactly how we are digging, what we are using for digging, and anything else. We also have a short video. We are not going to show you, and you can watch it, where we are talking about this in simpler terms, but it might be more difficult to watch this video if you're especially at the end of the room, and it basically talks about things that I've just described. This is not an operational board. And next slide. Yeah. Yes, it's on Commons. So we just had the selection for the Board of Trustees for 4 seats. Scrutiny is working now. I was told that there were like 6,000 votes cast. And the plan is to seat new trustees at December 11 board meeting, provided they have passed the background check and the board discussion. There are 6 community and affiliate selected seats, 5 board selected seats, and 1 founder seat reserved for Jimmy, but all trustees are appointed by the board, including Jimmy. Every year, the board has a discussion. Do we want to keep Jimmy on the board or not? So far, we have kept him. And we also have, because we were told that Q&As are very boring, and also it's a big room, and I'm only alone here. So we wanted to turn it more into a workshop on the 3 topic pilots that we had conversations about: global resource distribution, product technology, and affiliate strategy, basically. We are going to have also a 4th conversation about newcomers in the movement, because all of these topics are strategic topics. We need to talk about resources and how they are distributed in any case. We need to talk about product and technology because it's essential for our movement. And we need to talk about affiliates ecosystem and what are we doing or not doing. And we need to talk about newcomers, because this is also important. If we do not have new blood coming, we are doomed at some point. And also, all these topics are interconnected, because newcomers can be influenced by the product and technology decisions, or by the resources distribution, or by the affiliates ecosystem. So they're also all connected. And next. Can you go through the Yeah. Sorry. So, Product and Technology Advisory Council is it's not a new initiative because there have been initiatives like that. This is another try to figure out how the decision making in product and technology can be made collective or with co-ownership with not only with the organization that has to make decisions on some technology, but also with volunteers in a manageable way. And the pilot trials, I don't know, have been done like that in the past. This is a new figuring out how to do that. And October 7, or the week of October 7, we are supposed to receive the names of the membership of this Product Technology Advisory Council. The pilot is for a year. Selena, who is the Chief Product and Technology Officer, wants to try it and see how it works. Does it help? Does it help also volunteers to feel more involved? To make decisions more like broad on strategies, but also opportunities, figuring out that we are not missing things that are important. And there is ecosystem of movement organizations. This one is also very broad. Because we need to figure out how we are working together in the organized part of the movement. That pilot is also a bit challenging because we need to have a lot of conversations before we can do it. Some people were saying, okay, but why do you talk about funding before you are talking about affiliates ecosystem? And, there are challenges. Every NGO has yearly cycles. We have yearly budgets. We kind of need to give grants, and the organizations also depend on that. We cannot just stop funding for everyone in the movement, for all grantees in the movement, while we are figuring out what is the landscape, and then resume in a year. For some organizations, it might mean losing all the staff, losing all their grants and offices and everything else. So that's why we are doing it in parallel, meaning the resource distribution conversation is moving a bit forward because it's also more structured, while we want to also eat like that conversation to go back to the ecosystem conversation, so they would work together, even though the resource distribution is moving forward a bit more. And I want to Yael to come and talk about this pilot a bit more.
Thank you, Natalia's, plural. So I thought I would give a bit of, are we translating? Should I go slow? We're doing live translation? No. Okay, I'll try to go slow anyway. English is your third or fourth or fifth language, yes. Perfect, thank you, Wojciech. So I thought I would take a few minutes to describe the global resource distribution proposal in a little bit more detail and the process we're going through to get feedback on it, because I know this is something that has been of great interest to many people. So the goal of this proposal is to address some long-standing issues that have been happening in our movement around how we equitably and collectively make decisions about funding. Over the past year or so, we've been communicating with affiliates, running surveys with regional funds committees, and having other conversations to understand what is it specifically about how we as a movement, and right now how the foundation does grant making, that needs to shift. How do we move towards implementing the movement strategy recommendations? And we heard two things pretty clearly. One is that regional funds committees need to be more accountable to their regions and to their communities. And two, that we need a more participatory approach to making decisions at the global level, how we allocate funding, which thematic priorities we prioritize, how we distribute funding between regions, etc. So the proposal that many of you, hopefully all of you, have seen that's available on Meta tries to address these two issues. First, it proposes a change to how regional funds committee members are selected, shifting that selection from the foundation, where currently we call for volunteers and then appoint them to the committees, and instead calling for elections from the communities to the regional funds committees. Elections are not the only way to ensure that regional funds committee members are accountable to their communities. And so we're looking for your input and feedback. If you think elections make sense, why? If you think elections are not the best way to go about this, what would you propose instead to address this issue of regional funds committees being representative of and accountable to their communities? The second has done. In this fiscal year, we actually brought in a group of affiliates and engaged all of the regional funds committees in providing input on that. So it's a step towards more collective decision making. The proposed committee is intended to help us define how we allocate funding among regions. Also to help us think through things like, how do we allocate funding for global thematics? We have a lot of organizations and affiliates in our movement that may be based in a particular region, but their work is global and isn't focused on the region, it's focused on the thematics. So the proposal is that a global committee could help us make decisions like that. A global committee may also help us decide about how we think about funding hubs and affiliates in regions where the two exist. Obviously, CEE is a really interesting example. So the intent of this global committee is to help us define the questions that this movement has to define in order to assign funding, and also help us make decisions about that. Again, a global committee is not the only way to do this. We've tried other ways in the past and they haven't quite worked. And so the request for you is, if you agree with a global committee, help us make it better, help us define what it would look like, what its roles and responsibilities are, how to select its members. If you think a global committee is a terrible idea, what would you propose instead to address this issue of how we prioritize at the global level? So that is the basics of the proposal that was voted on a few months ago. The process in terms of how we're going to get feedback on this for the coming few months is threefold. So first, we're going to engage each of the regional funds committees in gathering their input. We're also in a process with the affiliate EDs. We're meeting with them monthly. And then in November, we'll have a workshop together in Oslo where we define some of these issues together. And then the third way we're soliciting input is open conversations. We're hosting sessions like this at each regional conference. So today, as part of the open consultation, we're doing a similar one at Wiki Indaba, WikiCon North America, etc. We're also hosting online global calls. There'll be 2 calls that anyone who would like to join is welcome to join. And as always, we're hosting a conversation, or we're facilitating a conversation on Meta. And I know a number of you, including the CEE Steering Committee, have already participated there on Meta. We would like to begin testing something by January. In the spirit of evaluating, iterating, and adapting, we want to take some steps so we can learn, because what we know of this movement is we can talk for a very long time. And so Wojciech is making some faces here. So the intent is to start trying something by January. I do not think we will have this figured out by January, but what can we start doing in January so that we can learn together and iterate as we go? So I think we'll be having breakout groups, and one of the breakout groups will be talking about this particular proposal.
Okay, so what will happen in a minute is, okay, so there is one untrue statement on this slide. No breakout table will be streamed. I'm sorry, online participants. We couldn't figure out the sound. But so ignore the streaming part. But other than that, in a moment, we will divide into 4 breakout groups when you can discuss all the proposals that have been mentioned. So if you're really interested about the resource distribution Yael was talking about a moment ago, you will follow her to a breakout group. If you really want to know about the affiliate strategy, about the ecosystem of our movements, maybe talk a little bit about the hubs, you will go with Nat. And I also want to mention that her table will be supervised by the Wikimedia Cuties Association. There's a cutie, so it's an important table. Then, if you really want to talk about product and tech and the future of movement, you will follow Shimon, who's right there. And if you feel like you don't, any of those topics doesn't sit with you, you can also come with me and talk a little bit about newcomers in our movement. It's less specific topic, but maybe it's of interest to you. But before we will divide into those groups and create a little bit of chaos with all the chairs moving, that will be fun. I would like to ask you if you have any questions related not those three experiments, but more general about the board of trustees on a strategic governance level. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. So you can, if you will have any questions later, Nada's here. You can catch her on any breaks and talk a little bit about it. But if not, let's start moving the chairs and creating chaos. So again, global resource distribution, yeah? Okay, let's check it beforehand. And also one important thing I didn't say is that we will be taking notes from all those discussions. So you can then read from discussions you haven't participated. Okay, so who's interested in Global Resource Distribution Committee, resources in the movement? Raise your hand. Who wants to talk this? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, great. Who really wants to go with Shimon and focus on product and technology advisory council? Okay, once again. And ecosystem of movement organizations? Wojciech, it will be a very I will be observing how you'll be participating in all of the discussions. Okay. And who just wants to talk with me about the newcomers? If you don't want to, don't worry. I won't be just feel like, oh, no one likes me. It's not that case. But I'm happy to. Okay. Anyway, people who want to talk about Global Resource Distribution Committee, follow Yale. And Product and Technology Advisory Council, Shimon, right there. That will lead you to ecosystem of movement organizations. I'm doing the newcomers, and Wojciech will be everywhere. If you want, you can stay here. To all the discussions come as a Wikimedian, lots of curiosity, lots of opinions. I don't think they are going to use mics. Yeah.